and a very warm welcome to Bharata First. You're watching Big Picture. I'm Frank Rausum Pereira. Since you're here, please like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and share the video as well so that more people get to know about Bharata First. Do subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team runs several quizzes. You can participate in them and improve your knowledge. If you like our content, please contribute to keep it alive. A small contribution that you make will be a giant leap for us to keep bringing you this content. Let me also take this opportunity to inform you about Bharata First Knowledge Center. It's an initiative that will help each one of you in your competitive exams and transform the way you learn. Go to kc.bharatafirst.com for more details and have a look at all our offerings. Experience a whole new way of gaining knowledge. Hundreds are already reaping the benefits of the Knowledge Center. Don't be left behind. Don't miss out. Register right now, as there's so much that we have to offer. All this information along with some must-see recommendations are in the description of the video. Please go through it. And now on to our discussion. In the past few months, a lot has been said over caste-based census that the opposition parties have called for. In spite of the government's reluctance on it, there is a growing demand for the same. However, effectively ruling out a caste census in 2021, the center has told the Supreme Court that such an exercise would not be feasible and that exclusion of information regarding any other caste apart from SCs and STs from the purview of consensus is a conscious policy decision. This was the key submission of the Ministry of Social Justice in an affidavit filed in the top court in response to a plea by the Maharashtra government seeking a direction to the Census Department to collect information on backward class of citizens in the 2021 enumeration. So do we need a caste census? That's what we will discuss in this edition of Big Picture. Joining me on the program today are Kapil Sankla, Advocate of the Supreme Court, Professor Avathi Ramaiah, Dean Equal Opportunity Center, and he is also at TISS. Also with us on the program is Professor Ashwani Kumar, Dean School of Development Studies, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of Big Picture. Professor Ashwani Kumar, let me start the program with you first. Let's first try and understand this entire issue because it has been widely debated for a few months now, and there have been several political parties who have come out and spoken about this issue. What are your thoughts? Let's hear your initial thoughts on, do we need a caste census in 2021?
I think as a political scientist, I've been talking about it, writing about it. So my first reaction is that I think it's it's no longer on a lighter note, a caste census, Birbal's khichdi, that imaginary khichdi. This is real and going to happen, very soon. The sooner the better, I mean, like if you look at the history of the census, going back to 1831 and then the first census 1872, I think this way adding caste as a category of classification and taxonomy, and based on that reordering the society for social justice and equity has been one of the major democratic deficits in the way we look at Indian democracy. I think time has come when the caste census has become urgent, I would tell, urgent, for making India, quoting, I have quoted, also that India will become a far more efficient and rational power sharing democracy, based on the idea of Leipart, who has been talking about, for last 40, 50 years about how we can make a democracy more power sharing, given the enormous diversity of caste, community, ethnicity, etc., etc. So, Frank, my first response to your question that what has happened and why 1931 has not been the ideal template for looking at society and reordering the society. I'm not coming to welfare issue of the caste census. Right now, I'm only looking at the caste as the fulcrum, as the central identity of our society. So based on 270 million people in 1931 census, 41 census had also caste and 51 also, but they did not release it based on some great idealistic notion that India would become a casteless society and classless society. So I would again reaffirm that idea that somehow, that whole, the whole governmentality system, or the technique or the tools of the census, which certainly leads to some people, some of my colleagues in sociology and anthropology have been talking about, including the great sociologists like M.S. Srinivas, that it will lead to more caste consciousness or so-called casteism. I think they fail to understand that the caste census is necessary for reordering and making democratic society more robust here. So this is the way I would go.
Absolutely. So, Kapil Sankla, let me bring you into the picture and sandwich you in between the two academicians and get a different perspective as well, a legal
was hoping to
perspective.
listen to the second eminent personality here, but we'll go with whatever you choose. You're the Sutrakar.
So, looking at how, things stand at the moment, because the reaction that the government has given in the Supreme Court, suggesting that it's not the right time to go through with a caste census at this point in time. Do you actually see it happening? Do we need it? And how would you look at it from a legal perspective?
Well, there are no right or wrong answers, Frank, especially as a lawyer. One is a socialist issue. One is the issue about the economy, whether the money that percolates down from the top goes to the right person, to the right pocket of people or not. That's one. The second is what is the census going to do? Whether it would have the effect of dividing India even more, or whether it would actually bring the correct picture of, as the Supreme Court said, creamy layer, whether the advantages are being taken by the lower caste, the creamy layer of the lower caste, or whether there is an unequal representation of the parties. So, I mean, these are questions that need to be decided, and also what would be the modalities. But the question is this: is it required at this stage? What advantage would it bring on the table? That's a question that we need to ask. And let's forget the politics. Let's actually forget the law. Let's just understand, if we still ask and wonder what a person's caste is, if the marriage alliances are based on caste, if we still search for the caste of a cricketer or a sports person, if we still do that, if we do, then caste is something which is so ingrained in our society at present that it is a reality whether we talk about it or not. Now, when we do, the question is the lower caste getting equal representation or not? When we talk about the Honorable Supreme Court statement of creamy layer, can we forgive the sins of the past and talk now of the future, that it doesn't matter what happened in the past? Now there are people in the lower caste or communities which have done better. So let's look at them and let's forget everybody else. I mean, India is still very divided. So as far as law is concerned, when you talk about the fundamental rights and the ideals and the ideas of the father of the Constitution, when you talk about what we thought India should be, have we really reached that level of maturity as a society to forget a person's caste, color, creed, whatever, and talk about his performance and achievements? If we haven't, then we really need to introspect, because in the right hands, it is a tool that actually tells us where we have reached now and where each caste has reached now. In the wrong hands, it has the capacity and the tendency to further divide India, which is already very fragmented. So as a lawyer, I'll not be able to answer the question, but as a nationalist and an Indian, I'm afraid that it probably would have the effect of dividing India even more. And so we need to have that kind of maturity to understand this kind of census. This is what my understanding is.
Absolutely. So, Professor Ramaiah, let me bring you into the picture now. You heard both panelists before you patiently. So let's talk about, how a caste census at this juncture can actually help. Will it change the way we look at our policies? Can policies be far more targeted? Or do you believe that it is a wasteful exercise, especially that we've been through the pandemic and gone through these difficult times?
See, in my opinion, this is something very fundamental for what Ambedkar called as nation building. This is the minimum thing that is fundamentally required for the process of nation building. The argument that caste census will perpetuate caste It's completely baseless, it's completely political, and I would say it is a very anti-national perspective. Taking that position itself, in my opinion, is a completely anti-national perspective. In the statement of Ambedkar, he himself made one argument when he's talking about data on untouchables of India. An essay he wrote long back on untouchables and their number. I want to quote only this thing. And basically to endorse what Mr. Kapil said. Ambedkar says, so long as caste continues to be used as one of the distinguishing features of an individual's official and social identity, it cannot be claimed that a decennial enumeration helps to perpetuate an undesirable institutions. I think beautiful statement is made, basically negating that census, a decadal census will perpetuate caste. This is, in my opinion, is completely nothing but a politics to bring to an end a process of revolution, development that has actually begun to take place, although in a very, very slow phase. Why I said it is necessary for a nation building process. And as we all know that the preamble of the Constitution says liberty, equality, social justice, and fraternity. And there is a logical progression behind arranging these universal ideals in that order, that you are keeping fraternity at the end. So to achieve that fraternity, which simply means oneness, we feeling as people of one nation. In order to achieve that, you need to see that every individual, irrespective of what community, caste, religion he belongs, has to enjoy liberty. Once that liberty is given, and again preamble listed what kind of liberty, that will help us to lead to equality and then to social justice, and finally it will result in fraternity. And it is only at that stage we will emerge as one nation, as people of India. That is why Ambedkar was also arguing at that time, we can't claim at this stage that we the Indians, because we have not yet become Indians. So we have to become Indians. And since it was not ready, he said, we the people of India. There was an argument behind why he did not agree for that statement, we the Indian. He said, we the people of India. So in order to become we the people of India to we the Indians, these are something fundamental, basic necessity, I feel, that unless you know how many people need what kind of help, what kind of a development policy you can think of. We have committed, in my opinion, a blunder, a 10% reservation for a 5% population without going for enumeration, any data. I think I'll stop it at this stage.
Right. Points taken. Let me build on those points and take the discussion forward. Now, Professor Ashwini Kumar, is there also a fear then that we are only going to see more reservation going forward? And as far as reservation is concerned, I'm joining caste census and reservation together here. We've seen, because it's a social issue and it can be looked at in the same way, and it can be combined together and looked at as well. We've seen reservation really as far as people enjoying reservation over 3 generations or 4 generations. Is there a need to look at, creamy layer, maybe even as far as the scheduled castes are concerned?
I think, Frank, this is my stated position in public and also based on the writings that I have been doing for several years. My sense is that, time has come, the whole idea of creamy layer, the whole idea of putting a 50% cap. If you look at these, I call artificial pseudo-constitutional devices, they have to go. Time has come. And if you look at the churning, if you look at the democratic churning that's happening at the bottom of Indian society, and I think time has come when the Supreme Court and the legal luminaries have to, rethink about, the whole creamy layer. I remember when I was growing up, there was nothing called creamy layer. We didn't even know what is cream, what is cream or cake, So on a lighter note, so I think this whole idea of creamy layer was, a backdoor artificial entry into our constitutional and jurisprudential language, and this is really prohibiting, the realization of equity and justice in the society. That's very important for developing a new constitutional and jurisprudential language. Secondly, if you look at the reality, look at the reality of, I've been citing the example of Tamil Nadu, 69% reservation. Even if you look at, Kapil is here, I think is far more enlightened person on this issue. I have a limited engagement with the law and, legal jurisprudential ideas. But based on whatever limited I have taught, even in the Indira Sahani case, Supreme Court has committed itself that, if there are exceptional circumstances, we can extend, 50% reservation, beyond 50% reservation. And we need data, we need evidence, that is why we need a caste census, caste census you look at. So my sense is that, looking at, and then third is a far more, philosophical and ethical argument, that once those who have been given reservation, and if you apply these artificial constitutional devices like creamy layer and artificial, completely arbitrary, 50%. And on the other hand, you have 69% Tamil Nadu. So why not Tamil Nadu become our constitutional lodestar? Why not? Why not it become a star guiding us? Looking at the history of mobilization of people, oppressed people. I don't use the term lower caste or inferior caste because that has been used by the colonial administrators and especially in 1881 census. Which is something we need to discard today from our discourse and the language. So I would suggest, Frank, that, when we look at, elite, very, like powerful economic and social elite, they don't, apply these similar. So let me conclude, Frank, here. So what I'm suggesting that, so what is happening, the reservation, let us look at, the very term, if you look at, it's not affirmative action. It's not affirmative action. It's not even positive discrimination. It is reservation, and I like reservation the way reservation has been implemented. It really shocks the powerful, smart little elite in the country. But it's very important to deepen and broaden the reservation through intergenerational process of equalizing the society. It's very important. As a political scientist and as someone who has looked at how people look at how the democracy has been sustained in India, not by the elite, not by the elite. If you look
Right.
at the success of Indian democracy, it has been really by the oppressed people. So this is
Right.
where I think these are flawed and spurious arguments to attack the very constitutional Republican foundation of India.
Points taken. Let me take those points forward now. And since Kapil Sankla wanted to speak after the two academicians, let me bring in Professor Ramaya into the picture now in the second round of questions. Professor Ramaya, Professor Kumar was talking about extension. If you look at the basis of reservation itself, it was not meant to be something that would go on for this long. It was supposed to be temporary in nature, and it has continued. And we've seen, like Mr. Kumar has, like Professor Kumar has just pointed out, in Tamil Nadu, it has gone up to 69%. There is a section of society that believes that there is nothing left for them. The whole idea of India is to take everyone along, and we should not have that sense of feeling with any of the populace within the country, isn't it? So we should take everyone along.
I fully agree with you. I think the country is made up of, all together constitute the nation. So everybody should go along. And just to give you some data, everybody should, reservation is nothing but representation. Everybody should represent everywhere. That's what actually the philosophy behind reservations. Just give you data a little bit. You are saying, some people feel they are left out. I'm giving you data. This is a SC, ST, OBC in top government positions, 2019 data. It was published in the print this day. The OBC at the position of secretaries, not even, it's a 0% representation. OBC representation at the level of secretaries, it is 0. Additional secretaries, again 0. It is only at the joint secretary level, there are 19, which means 6.9% only. OBC constitute, even if you go by 1931 census, 52%. Say roughly say 45%. Their representation is just 6.9%. How can anybody say that they are left out? So that means who has taken the rest? Coming to the next, the SC's representation as secretaries, only one position. In terms of percentage, 1.1. As additional secretaries, the scheduled caste represent the number, actual number is 6, so 6.5%. The joint secretary, 13, 4.7%. The scheduled tribe, only 3 number as secretaries. That means 3.4%. Additional secretaries, only 5 members and 5.4%. Joint secretary, 9 people are there, so 3.3%. And non-SC, ST, OBC, who are those? Put in the traditional language, as Ashwini Kumar said, it is Savarna caste, the so-called upper caste. I don't want to use that word. The Savarna caste. It is 85 secretaries. 85 secretaries accounting for 95.5% of the total number of secretaries at this point in time in government. 82 numbers are there as additional secretary accounting for 88.1%. 234 joint secretaries accounting for 85.1%. Now, who is representing and what basis they make a claim that they are left out? Nothing. So that 5% left for SC, ST, OBC together constitute 80%. 80% representing 5%. Even that they cannot tolerate. So it is a baseless, very, very unethical argument, in my opinion. Completely baseless, unethical argument. They just want India has to be completely under the control of the so-called Savarna caste. I think I'll stop with that this way.
All right. Kapil Sankla, let me come back to you now. You've been patiently listening to the other 2 panelists over the last 10 minutes or so, so taking you out of turn now. How would you look at this entire issue, and how would you look at this from a perspective of, why is caste still such a big issue in our country? After so many years of independence, we are still so vociferous when it comes to caste. We still continue to fight all battles, on the level of caste.
I completely agree with you, Frank. In fact, it's very interesting. On your show, I think a few months back, we were again discussing caste. And I made a statement, and it was very interesting. I actually got a message from somebody asking me what my caste was, because I was supporting reservation. And I found it very interesting. And I was reading an RSS book where it seems Ambedkar Saab had gone for an RSS meeting. And he had said that, I see that most of you are upper caste. And the gentleman then had said that, and he said, what is your caste? And it seemed the answer to Ambedkar ji was that when I teach, I am a Brahmin. When I fight for my cause, I am a Kshatriya. When I do the accounting, I am a Banya. And when I pick up the Jhula, when you leave, I would be a Shudra. I am a Hindu. I love that statement. And I love that statement because I believe if only everybody else believed it. Unfortunately not. I think we are all in consensus here that census is imperative. It is important. It needs to regulate and equalize and create an equal playing field. We as Indians have a very sordid past. I would like to believe that it started with the Britishers who started with this divisive politics, but I'm sure it was there before. And I believe that the equal representation is very important. That's my personal belief. I was doing a bit of research and I was reading about it, and I was reading a little chapter from Who Were the Shudras. It was very beautiful when Ambedkar Sahab said, if people have no idea of the magnitude of the problem of the Shudras, it's because they have not cared to know what the population of the Shudras is. Unfortunately, the census does not show their population separately, but there is no doubt that excluding the untouchables, the Shudras, from 75 to 80% of the population of Hindus, etc., etc. And I also read another gentleman whose name was Shering, who, in favor of census, and this was somewhere in Britain, he said, even the most distorted and ugly should be fairly represented and fully understood. So I understand everything in favor of census. I understand it is required. As I said, it just has to be done with the right heart and spirit. It has to be done with the desire to correct the ills that we as a nation, we as a country, we as a society face. Because at the end of the day, when you really talk about caste, what is it? It's about pocketing, putting people in different pockets. And then by their birth, not by what they have done, what they're doing. And just because probably my great grandfather was a sweeper, I'm a lawyer, I'm still a sweeper for the world. I mean, that's where I'm supposed to get married. I think it's very, very unfair. Or there could be a rogue, but he's a Brahmin, and you would still say, but he's Panditji. It is unfair. You know, your acts, what you do today in this karma, should actually decide. And it's very interesting because the research tells me that, you know, there was census that was done during Kautilya's time. In Arthashastras, they actually say that this was the grassroots movement where it would start from the village. Within Akbarnama, there is an entire chapter dedicated to how census was taken, to find out who were the merchants, who were the farmers, who were the soldiers. It wasn't really based on caste, but what you were doing, as far as my understanding is. The fragmentation as to who your father or grandfather, great-grandfather was, unfortunately, is the one that's divided our country, and unfortunately, the politicization of the same is there for political benefits of divisive politics, not to consolidate us as Indians. That's the unfortunate part. We see the Constitution 15.4, of course, Ashwini ji, just concluding, 15.4 of the Constitution, there are special provisions as far as the advancement of the social and the backward is concerned. As far in Article 16.4 of the Constitution, reservation is provided to BCs as far as their economic status is concerned. All of that is good, and I'm in complete agreement here with the panelists that this concept of creamy layer was not there. It is a foreign word or sentence or term that was subsequently added. And I can't actually say that the Supreme Court was wrong, but every judge also is a human being. And they have their own personal biases and prejudices and understanding of the society. But when you look at the larger picture, and when you think of consolidating India and bringing India up together from the grassroots, we need to be real. And probably this census, with the right spirit and the right intention, would be definitely a move in the right direction.
Right, then it's time to get
Ashwini.
closing comments from all my panelists with the best way forward. I can start with Professor Ashwini Kumar. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to make, Frank, a couple of remarks quickly rather than a full argument here. The first the whole idea of divisiveness, the whole idea of caste being divisive, I think that's a flawed understanding. I think if you look at time immemorial, and I think, as a sociologist and political scientist, we have seen, researches, writings, colonial ethnographies, it's not that the British came or they created caste out of vacuum. I mean, like, even you go back to Jataka, look at the Buddha time, the way Buddha attacked the caste system and the Varna system. So let's not forget that. I mean, like, attacking and destroying, and what Baba Saheb said beautifully, annihilating caste through a social democratic revolution will be, I think, the ultimate goal of making India a far more republican and far more democratic society. So being caste is not a decisive, in a divisive, so, making it a part of census is not going to divide us forever. A. B, there are de facto caste census, through your channel. I just want to inform people that it is not that caste has not been being counted, I remember that when we started talking about the caste census, in the last 2 months, especially Frank, a lot of people asked me that where is this socio-economic caste census done by the UPA government? It is still there. If you look at Ayushman Bharat scheme or Prime Minister, Awas Yojana, it's already being identified on the basis of the same caste survey. It is there. It is there, and it is being part of Rural Development Ministry, Social Justice Ministry, and in various schemes, the data is being used. The data is not just being released. Secondly, let's not forget that this committee, what is called Kantaraj Commission in Karnataka.
Hmm.
Siddharamaiah spent 140 crore on caste census in the state. Why we forget that? And now come back here now Nitish Kumar is announcing a caste survey in Bihar. So what, and also come back, the district, if you have time, just look at, district level MIS system for education, tracking the data on the primary school enrollment, it's based on the caste. There is OBC data.
Right.
Forget about SC, ST. Just look at how OBC data has been captured through many de facto, and recently the same government, the nationalist government in the center has issued from Ministry of Statistics and Implementation the large data, past data, 17.5 crore households in rural India, and they have pointed out that there are 45% OBC in terms of Frank agriculture households and rural household. So let's demystify this idea that there is no caste census happening. In many ways, caste census is happening. All we
Sure.
have to do to bring it into the larger framework of the caste, and make it more de jure. And the debate that I see today is reminding me of 2020 debate, when the census was being planned. It has almost done. It has almost been decided by Vajpayee government that caste would be finally added to it. Coming back to the larger global situation on census, let us not forget, Frank, the British who introduced census here in 1872. They wanted to do it immediately after mutiny, but they couldn't do it. In 1990, they added the race and religion to their census. Finally, just look at Britain itself. Look at France. I think there is also a global template available for us, which clearly refers to us that a race, class, caste, they are not going to divide us if they become part of the census. I stop here.
All right. Professor Ramaiah, best way forward. How do we get through this?
Okay. See, I think the most pitiable community, I would say, at this point in time is the backward caste. We do not have any data. 31 census is 52%. NSS 55th round, that is 1999-20, says 35.80% is their populations. Census of India 2011 says 41%. NSS was 61st round 2004-5 says 40.94%. And the periodical labor force survey of 2018-19 says 43.90%. So this varies, every source varies. The government cannot take any decision. You need to have a clear-cut data on this so that you are able to help this community. You have a government which introduced some scholarships. We are saying that, the poor should be benefited. The creamy layer we are repeatedly talking about. Backward caste students eligible for Government of India scholarship, the parents' income should be less than 1 lakh rupees to get a scholarship of 300, 400, 500 rupees. That's all is the scholarship. That is what the government has done so far to the unfortunate OBC communities. But the OBC community does not realize that. They are completely into that dogma and they are going into celebration of religion and so on. They are caught with that. Census is a must. And as we know, caste is by accident. It's not by any meritorious act. Somebody slept with some and you happen to get that caste. So nobody qualified to become a Brahmin or to become a scheduled caste. It's an accident where you are born and your caste is chosen. So and a psychological sense, it is one should feel ashamed about talking about one's own caste. He has to qualify. So on our daily life, one should be judged on the basis of merit. When you are talking about merit-based reservation, on a daily life, that's what Ambedkar calls a social democracy. Our daily life should be based on this merit of what I am worthy of, not based on my birth, but based on my worth. That should become a daily life. Now, caste census, in no way it is going to affect anybody. Caste is nothing but a name. Ramaya, Ashwini, and we are there just names. It's all in our psyche. If I want to look you down upon, I can do it. That shows how mature I am. So the whole Indian society has to be civilized. In my opinion, we are still in a dogmatic, barbaric mindset that we are not able to look at human beings as human beings. And to say that by taking a census, this is going to perpetuate caste, I'm sorry to use this word, it's a completely baseless and fraud, as my colleague said, it is a fraud. So I think we must go for a census completely. Just only one question, what is your caste? That's all. Then you can do grouping, regrouping, rest all, whether you are a Brahmin or a upper caste, middle caste, what caste, all can be done later on. Just what is your caste name? Put it, that's all. It is a caste name. Why somebody has to, how it can, a particular name can perpetuate caste. So I am all for caste, and this is how nation can be built. If somebody is called this, Chamar, this caste, it's a name, no matter. Absolutely fine. Thank you.
And Kapil Sankla, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
5 points as far as I understand. Census without politics. I honestly believe that. Validated statistics. Because if you do not have proper scientific methodology, it would be skewed, it would be questionable and open to debate. I believe that we should actually work towards equal education as well as representation. That is both of which is very, very required. Working towards a casteless society, I mean, that is something that we've been working at from our independence, but not by removing reservation as the apprehension is, but by creating, as rightly said, by creating a world with social democracy. And lastly, I think empathizing with the marginalized and probably having pride, a nationalistic pride rather than a pride in our surname. That's what my understanding is. That's it.
All right. Points taken. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on the program, sharing your views and putting things into perspective for us. Well, what's coming out of this discussion is that the caste census is a much needed exercise. It is a good way to understand the caste numbers and work out policies from there. However, there is a genuine concern about how this could be misused, and that needs to be addressed. There is a sense among certain sections of society that we already have too much of reservation as far as castes are concerned. So caste census will only increase that, like we've seen in the state of Tamil Nadu, which has gone beyond the 50% cap set by the Supreme Court to 69% as far as caste-based reservation is concerned. It will have to be done in the right spirit and intention, and that's going to be important. It is also unfortunate that caste continues to be such a big factor even today. The sooner we move away from it, the better, but that might not happen anytime soon, as caste is a potent political tool, and that's something that the politicians will always use. Now, before I go, once again, let me remind you to like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and then share the video as well. Do subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team runs several quizzes. You can participate in them. If you like our content, please contribute to keep it alive. Let me also take this opportunity to inform you about Bharata First Knowledge Center. It's an initiative that will help each one of you in your competitive exams and transform the way you learn. Go to kc.bharatafirst.com for more details. Experience a whole new way of gaining knowledge. Hundreds are already reaping the benefits of the Knowledge Center. Don't be left behind. Don't miss out. Register now, as there's so much that we have to offer. All this information, along with some must-see recommendations, are in the description of the video. Please go through it. That's it from me. See you again next time.